The year was 1923, and the city of Vienna was alive with music, wealth, and the sharp divide between those who had everything and those who had nothing. In the heart of this golden city lived a woman named Helena. She was 28 years old, beautiful like a painting, and richer than most people could ever dream. Her father had built an empire in banking and trade. When he died 3 years ago, he left everything to his only daughter. Helena lived in a mansion that looked like a palace. It had 40 rooms, gardens that stretched for acres, and servants who worked day and night to keep everything perfect. She wore dresses made of the finest silk, jewelry that sparkled like stars, and shoes that cost more than what a worker earned in a whole year. Everyone in Vienna knew her name. Everyone wanted to be close to her. Everyone wanted her money. But Helena was not happy. She had everything money could buy, but she felt empty inside. Her mother had died when she was young, and her father had been too busy building his fortune to spend time with her. She grew up surrounded by luxury but starved of love. Now, at 28, she was alone in her big mansion, with only servants and distant relatives who pretended to care about her while secretly counting her money in their minds. Helena had one passion that kept her alive: music. She loved music more than anything else in the world. Her father had hired the best teachers to train her in piano when she was a child. She could play beautifully, and she understood music in a way that touched her soul. But there was one piece of music that haunted her, a melody that her mother used to hum when Helena was just a little girl. Her mother called it the Song of the Heart. She said it was an old family melody, passed down through generations, but she had never written it down. When her mother died suddenly, the melody died with her. Helena had spent years trying to remember that song. She had hired musicians, composers, and scholars to help her recreate it, but no one could. The melody was lost, and with it, Helena felt she had lost the last piece of her mother. She offered rewards, held competitions, and interviewed hundreds of musicians. None of them could play the song that lived only in her fading memories. This obsession made Helena bitter. She started to believe that no one in the world truly understood music. She began to mock musicians who came to her door, challenging them to impossible tasks. She would laugh at their failures and send them away with nothing. The people of Vienna started to whisper about her. They called her the Ice Queen, the woman with a frozen heart. Some said she was cruel. Others said she was simply broken. On the other side of Vienna, in the part of the city, lived a man named Isaac. He was 32 years old, thin, and wore clothes that had been patched so many times they looked like a quilt. Isaac was a Jew, and in those days, being Jewish meant facing hatred and discrimination at every turn. He could not get good jobs. He could not live in nice neighborhoods. He was looked down upon by society simply because of his faith. But Isaac had a gift. He could play the violin like no one else. His fingers moved across the strings like magic, creating music that could make people cry, laugh, or dream. He had learned to play from his grandfather, who had learned from his grandfather before him. The violin Isaac owned was old and worn, but it had been in his family for over 100 years. It was his most precious possession. Isaac lived in a tiny room above a bakery. He worked during the day doing odd jobs, carrying heavy loads, cleaning stables, and doing whatever work he could find. At night, he played his violin in the streets. Hopping people would drop a few coins into his hat. Most people walked past him without looking. Some threw insults instead of money, but Isaac never stopped playing. Music was his life, his prayer, and his hope. Isaac had a dream. He wanted to play in a real concert hall someday. He wanted people to hear his music and feel what he felt when he played. But he knew that dream was almost impossible. Concert halls did not welcome poor Jewish street musicians. The world was not fair, and Isaac had accepted that long ago. Still, he never let bitterness poison his heart. He believed that music was a gift from God, and he played with gratitude every single day. One cold evening in November, Isaac was playing his violin near the central market. The wind was harsh, and his fingers were almost frozen. Most people hurried past, wrapped in their warm coats, ignoring the thin man making beautiful music in the cold. Isaac was about to give up for the night when he heard footsteps stop in front of him. He looked up and saw a young woman standing there. She was dressed simply, in a brown coat and plain shoes. Her face was kind, and she was listening to his music with tears in her eyes. When Isaac finished the piece, she clapped softly. "That was beautiful," she said. "I have never heard anyone play like that." Isaac smiled and thanked her. They talked for a few minutes, and Isaac learned that her name was Maria. She worked as a maid in one of the big houses in the city. She loved music too, but she could not afford to go to concerts. She came to the streets to listen to musicians like Isaac. Maria told Isaac something that would change his life. She said that her employer, the famous Helena, was holding a competition. Helena was offering a fortune to any musician who could play a certain melody, a melody that no one knew. Maria did not know the details, but she said many musicians had tried and failed. Helena had mocked them all. Isaac listened carefully. He was not interested in the money or the mockery, but something about the story touched him. A woman searching for a lost melody, a song that no one could play. It sounded like a person searching for something more than music. It sounded like someone searching for a piece of their soul. That night Isaac could not sleep. He kept thinking about the mysterious melody. He wondered what it sounded like. He wondered why it was so important to this wealthy woman, and somewhere deep inside he felt a strange pull, a feeling that he was supposed to do something about this. The next morning Isaac made a decision. He would go to the mansion. He would not go for the money or the fame. He would go because something in his heart told him to. He did not know what would happen. He did not know if he would be laughed at or thrown out, but he knew he had to try. He put on his cleanest clothes, picked up his old violin, and began the long walk to the richest part of the city. People stared at him as he walked. A poor Jewish man with a worn violin heading toward the mansions of the wealthy. It seemed foolish. It seemed impossible. But Isaac kept walking, one step at a time, toward a destiny he could not yet understand. The gates of the mansion were made of iron and gold. They stood tall and proud, like guards protecting a treasure. Isaac stood before them, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. His worn shoes were covered in dust from the long walk. His violin case was strapped to his back. A guard in a fine uniform looked at him with disgust. "What do you want?" the guard asked, his voice cold and harsh. Isaac straightened his back and tried to speak with confidence. "I am here to see Miss Helena. I heard she is looking for a musician who can play a certain melody." The guard laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You, a beggar with a broken violin. Miss has seen the finest musicians in Europe. What makes you think she would waste her time on someone like you?" Isaac felt the sting of those words, but he did not let them break him. He had faced cruelty all his life. "Please," he said calmly, "just tell her that a musician has come. If she refuses to see me, I will leave peacefully." The guard stared at him for a long moment. Something in Isaac's eyes must have moved him because he finally shrugged and walked away to deliver the message. Isaac waited by the gate, watching the beautiful gardens inside. He had never seen so many flowers in one place. They were every color imaginable, arranged in perfect patterns. It was like standing at the edge of paradise. After what felt like hours, the guard returned. His face showed surprise. "Miss will see you," he said, as if he could not believe his own words. "Follow me." Isaac walked through the gates and into another world. The mansion was even more beautiful up close. Statues lined the path. Fountains sparkled in the sunlight. Servants moved silently, carrying trays and cleaning windows. Everything was perfect, polished, and expensive. Isaac felt like a speck of dust in a palace of diamonds. The guard led him through the front doors and into a grand hall. The ceiling was painted with angels and clouds. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. The floor was marble, so shiny that Isaac could see his own reflection. He had never imagined such beauty existed. They walked through several rooms, each more stunning than the last. Finally, they arrived at a large salon. In the center of the room stood a magnificent grand piano, its black surface gleaming. Sitting beside it in a chair that looked like a throne was Helena. She was beautiful, but her beauty was cold. Her hair was pulled back tightly. Her blue eyes were sharp like ice. She wore a dress of deep purple, covered in jewels that sparkled with every small movement. She looked at Isaac the way one might look at an insect. "So," she said, her voice dripping with amusement, "another fool has come to try his luck." Isaac bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you for seeing me, miss." Helena laughed. "Do not thank me yet. I have seen hundreds of musicians, trained professionals from the best schools in Europe. They all failed. And now you come to me, dressed in rags, carrying that pathetic instrument, and you think you can succeed where they could not." Isaac did not react to her insults. "I do not know if I can succeed," he said honestly. "I only know that I felt called to come here." Helena raised an eyebrow. "Called by what? Your empty stomach, your need for money." "By something I cannot explain," Isaac replied. "When I heard about your search for a melody, something stirred in my heart. Music is not just sound to me. It is the language of the soul. I thought perhaps I could help." Helena stood up and walked toward him. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor. She circled him like a predator examining its prey. "Help me? You want to help me? Do you know what melody I am searching for?" "No," Isaac admitted, "but I would like to hear about it." Helena stopped and looked at him with a strange expression. Most musicians came in boasting about their skills, promising they could play anything. This man admitted he did not know the melody and simply wanted to listen. It was different. It was unexpected. "The melody I seek," Helena began slowly, "is called the Song of the Heart. My mother used to hum it to me when I was a child. It was an old family song passed down for generations, but it was never written down. When my mother died, the song died with her. I have spent years trying to find someone who knows it, who can recreate it from my memories. No one has succeeded." Isaac listened carefully. He could hear the pain hidden beneath her cold words. "What do you remember of the melody?" he asked gently. Helena looked at him sharply, as if surprised by the question. "Bits and pieces, a few notes here and there. It was soft and sad like a lullaby. It made me feel safe. It made me feel loved." "And you miss that feeling," Isaac said quietly. Helena's eyes flickered with something like vulnerability, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual hardness. "Enough of this," she said sharply. "If you want to try, then try. But know this, every musician who has failed has been humiliated and sent away with nothing. I do not tolerate fools." She walked to a small table and picked up a glass of wine. Then she settled back into her chair and waved her hand dismissively. "Play something. Show me what you can do." Isaac nodded. He carefully took his violin from its case. Helena noticed how gently he handled it, how his fingers touched the old wood with love. The violin was clearly ancient, but Isaac treated it like the most precious treasure in the world. He lifted the instrument to his shoulder, closed his eyes, and began to play. The first notes filled the room like a warm breeze. Helena had expected clumsy playing from such a ragged man, but what she heard was something else entirely. The music was pure, beautiful, and full of emotion. It seemed to tell a story without words. It spoke of longing, loss, hope, and love. Helena found herself unable to look away. Her wine glass froze halfway to her lips. The servants who were passing by stopped and listened. Even the guard who had mocked Isaac stood still, moved by the music. Isaac played for several minutes. He played pieces he had learned from his grandfather. He played melodies that had been in his family for generations. Each note was perfect, each phrase filled with meaning. When he finally stopped, silence hung in the room like a spell. Helena said nothing for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. Then she set down her wine glass and spoke. "You play well," she admitted, her voice quieter than before. "Better than most who have come here, but playing well is not enough. Can you play the Song of the Heart?" Isaac lowered his violin. "I do not know that melody," he said truthfully, But if you could hum what you remember, even a few notes, perhaps I could try to understand it." Helena stood up abruptly. "I have tried that with dozens of musicians. They all failed. Why would you be any different?" "Perhaps I would not be," Isaac said, "but perhaps I would. You will not know unless you try." Helena stared at him. There was something in his calm confidence that unsettled her. He was not arrogant, he was not boastful. He simply believed in the power of music, and despite herself, she wanted to believe too. "Very well," she said finally. "I will give you one chance. Come back tomorrow evening. I will hum what I remember and you will try to play it. But I warn you, if you fail like all the others, I will mock you just as I mocked them. I will tell all of Vienna about the foolish Jewish beggar who dared to challenge me." Isaac bowed his head. "I understand." As he turned to leave, Helena called out one more time. "And one more thing. If by some miracle you can play the melody, if you can truly capture the song of the heart, then I will marry you." She said it with a laugh, a cruel joke meant to humiliate him. The idea of a wealthy heiress marrying a poor Jewish street musician was absurd, impossible, laughable. She expected him to stammer or look shocked. But Isaac simply looked at her with calm eyes and nodded. "Then I will see you tomorrow evening, miss." He walked out of the mansion, leaving Helena staring after him with a strange feeling she could not name. Isaac walked back through the streets of Vienna in a daze. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The beautiful mansions of the wealthy neighborhood gave way to smaller houses, then to the crowded, dirty streets where he lived. But Isaac barely noticed his surroundings. His mind was spinning with everything that had happened. He had met Helena, he had played for her, and she had challenged him to play a melody that no one knew, a song lost to time. If he succeeded, she would marry him. Of course, she had said it as a joke, a way to mock him. But Isaac did not think about marriage or wealth. He thought only about the melody and the pain he had seen hiding behind Helena's cold eyes. When he reached his tiny room above the bakery, Isaac sat down on his narrow bed and held his violin close. He thought about his grandfather, a man who had taught him everything he knew about music. His grandfather had been a wise old man with gentle hands and a voice like honey. He used to tell Isaac stories about their ancestors, about the Jewish communities scattered across Europe, and about the melodies that had been passed down through generations. "Music is memory," his grandfather had said. "Every song carries the soul of those who played it before. When you play, you are not alone. You play with all the generations that came before you." Isaac wondered if the Song of the Heart was one of those ancient melodies. Helena had said it was a family song passed down for generations. Could it be possible that his family knew the same song? It seemed unlikely. Helena's family was wealthy and Christian. Isaac's family was poor and Jewish. What connection could there be? But music did not care about wealth or religion. Music was a bridge that connected all people, all faiths, all backgrounds. Isaac decided he would spend the night searching his memory for any melody that might match Helena's description. Soft and sad, like a lullaby. A song that made someone feel safe and loved. He played for hours that night. He played every lullaby he knew, every sad melody, every gentle song his grandfather had taught him. The neighbors complained about the late-night music, but Isaac ignored them. He was on a mission. He was searching for something that might not even exist. As the night grew deeper, Isaac began to grow tired. His fingers ached from playing. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion. He was about to give up and try to sleep when a memory suddenly surfaced in his mind. He remembered his grandmother. She had died when Isaac was only 7 years old, but he still remembered her warmth, her kindness, and her voice. She used to sing to him when he was sick or scared. She sang a special song, a melody that was unlike any other he had heard. She called it by a name Isaac had long forgotten. He closed his eyes and tried to remember. The memory was faded like an old photograph left in the sun. But slowly, note by note, the melody began to come back to him. It was soft and sad, filled with longing and love. It was a song that spoke of loss and hope, of darkness and light. It was, he realized with a shock, exactly how Helena had described the song of the heart. Isaac's hands trembled as he lifted his violin. Could it be possible? Could his grandmother's lullaby be the same melody Helena was searching for? It seemed impossible, but Isaac had learned long ago that the world was full of impossible things. He began to play. The notes floated into the dark room, delicate and beautiful. The melody was not complete in his memory. There were gaps, places where he could not remember what came next, but the parts he did remember were hauntingly beautiful. He played them over and over, trying to fill in the missing pieces. Morning came, and Isaac had not slept at all. His eyes were red and his body was exhausted, but his spirit was burning with purpose. He had the beginning of the melody. Now he needed to complete it. He had less than a day to figure out the rest. Isaac decided to visit the old Jewish quarter of the city. There were elders there who knew ancient songs and traditions. Perhaps one of them would recognize the melody and know how it continued. He grabbed a piece of bread for breakfast and hurried out into the morning streets. The Jewish quarter was a maze of narrow streets and old buildings. Jewish families had lived there for centuries, keeping their traditions alive despite the hatred and persecution they faced. Isaac knew many of the people there. They were poor like him, struggling to survive, but rich in spirit and community. He went first to the synagogue, where the old rabbi spent his mornings in prayer and study. Rabbi was nearly 80 years old, with a long white beard and eyes that held decades of wisdom. Isaac had known him since childhood. "Isaac, my boy," the rabbi said warmly, "what brings you here so early?" Isaac explained everything. He told the rabbi about Helena, about her search for the lost melody, and about the memory of his grandmother's lullaby. He played the parts of the melody he remembered, and the rabbi listened with closed eyes. When Isaac finished, Rabbi was silent for a long moment. Then he opened his eyes, and Isaac saw tears glistening there. "I know this melody," the rabbi said softly. "I have not heard it in over 50 years, but I know it." Isaac's heart leaped. "You do? What is it called? How does it continue?" The rabbi took a deep breath. "This melody is very old, Isaac, very old and very sacred. It comes from a time before our families settled here in Vienna. It is said that this song was composed by a Jewish musician who fell in love with a Christian noblewoman many generations ago. Their love was forbidden, impossible. They could never be together. So he wrote this melody for her, a song that expressed all the love he could never speak aloud." Isaac listened, fascinated and confused. But Helena said this was her family song, her Christian family. The rabbi nodded slowly. "Yes, because the noblewoman treasured the melody. She kept it secret and passed it down to her daughters, generation after generation. The Jewish musician who composed it died without ever seeing his love again, but his melody lived on in her family." "And in ours," Isaac whispered, understanding dawning. "Yes," the rabbi confirmed, "because the musician also passed the melody to his own family. It was his gift to his children, a reminder of the power of love and music. Over the centuries, both families kept the song alive without ever knowing that the other family had it too." Isaac was amazed. Helena's family and his own were connected by this melody, stretching back through generations to a forbidden love story that had never been forgotten. The rich Christian heiress and the poor Jewish street musician were linked by a bond older than either of them could imagine. "But Rabbi," Isaac said urgently, "I do not remember the complete melody. There are parts missing. Can you help me?" Rabbi smiled gently. "I remember most of it, but not all. The memory fades with time. However, I know someone who might help. There is a woman named Miriam who lives on the edge of the quarter. She is very old, older than me even. She was known in her youth for her beautiful singing voice. She used to sing this melody at weddings and special occasions. If anyone knows the complete song, it is her." Isaac thanked the rabbi and hurried to find Miriam. His heart was pounding with hope and excitement. He was getting closer to the truth, closer to unlocking the mystery of the song of the heart. And with every step, he felt that he was walking toward something more than just a melody. He was walking toward his destiny. The streets seemed brighter somehow. The air seemed fresher. Isaac did not know what the evening would bring, but he knew that something extraordinary was happening. The threads of the past were weaving together, connecting two families, two faiths, and two souls who had never met but were always meant to find each other. Miriam's house was at the very end of a crooked little street. It was a small building, leaning slightly to one side as if tired from standing for so many years. The paint was peeling, and the windows were cloudy with age. But there were flowers in the window boxes, bright and cheerful, showing that someone inside still cared about beauty. Isaac knocked on the door and waited. After a long moment, he heard slow footsteps shuffling inside. The door creaked open, and a tiny woman appeared. She was bent with age, her face a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and bright like two black diamonds. She wore a simple dress and a worn shawl around her thin shoulders. "Who is there?" she asked, squinting up at Isaac. "My name is Isaac," he said respectfully. "Rabbi sent me. He said you might be able to help me with something very important." Miriam studied him for a moment, then nodded and stepped aside. Come in, come in. I cannot keep standing at this door. My old bones protest." Isaac entered the small house. It was neat and clean inside, filled with old furniture and photographs of people long gone. The smell of herbs and bread filled the air. Miriam led him to a small sitting room and gestured for him to take a chair. "Now," she said, settling into her own chair with a sigh, "what does a young man like you need from an old woman like me?" Isaac told her his story. He spoke of Helena and her search for the lost melody. He explained what Rabbi had told him about the ancient love story connecting their families. Then he lifted his violin and played the parts of the melody he remembered. Miriam listened with her eyes closed. As the music filled the room, her wrinkled face softened. Tears began to slip down her cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. She let them fall freely, as if the music had unlocked something deep inside her. When Isaac stopped playing, Miriam opened her eyes. They were filled with wonder and memory. "I have not heard those notes in over 40 years, she whispered. "My mother used to sing that melody to me when I was a child, and her mother sang it to her. It goes back farther than anyone can remember." "Do you know the complete melody?" Isaac asked hopefully. Miriam was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I believe I do. My mother taught it to me carefully, note by note. She made me promise never to forget it. She said this melody was a sacred trust, passed down through the women of our family." Isaac's heart soared. "Would you teach it to me? Please, it is very important." Miriam looked at him with searching eyes. "Tell me why. Why is this melody so important to you? Is it for the money, for the fame?" Isaac shook his head. "No, I do not care about money or fame. I care about the woman who is searching for this song. She has lost something precious, a connection to her mother who died too soon. This melody is all she has left of that love. I want to help her find it again." Miriam studied him for a long time. Whatever she saw in his face must have satisfied her because she finally smiled, a gentle smile that transformed her aged face. "You have a good heart, Isaac. I can see it in your eyes. My mother always said this melody would one day bring two broken souls together. Perhaps you are the one who will make that prophecy come true." She stood up slowly and walked to an old cabinet in the corner. From inside, she pulled out a faded piece of paper, yellow with age. She handled it carefully, as if it might crumble at any moment. "This is the only written record of the melody," she explained. "My grandmother wrote it down many years ago, in case the memory was ever lost. I have kept it safe all these years, waiting for the right person to receive it." She handed the paper to Isaac. He looked at it with reverence. The musical notes were handwritten in old-fashioned style, faded but still legible. It was the complete melody from beginning to end. "Thank you," Isaac said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Miriam patted his hand. "Do not thank me yet. Learning the notes is only the beginning. You must learn to play them with your heart. This melody is not just music. It is a story, a prayer, a bridge between worlds. Play it with your soul or do not play it at all." Isaac spent the next several hours with Miriam. She hummed the melody for him while he followed along on his violin. She corrected his mistakes and guided him through the difficult passages. She told him stories about the melody, about the legend of the Jewish musician and his forbidden love, about the generations of women who had kept the song alive. By the time Isaac left Miriam's house, the sun was beginning to set. He had only a few hours before his meeting with Helena. His body was exhausted, but his spirit was on fire. He had the complete melody. He knew how to play it. Now he just had to hope that Helena would recognize it as the song her mother had sung. Isaac walked through the streets of Vienna, practicing the melody in his mind. People passed him without a second glance. To them, he was just another poor man, invisible and unimportant. They could not know that he carried something precious, something that had traveled through centuries to reach this moment. He thought about Helena, alone in her big mansion with all her money and none of the things that truly mattered. He thought about her mother, dying young and taking the melody with her. He thought about the Jewish musician from long ago who had loved a woman he could never have and had poured all that love into a song. Music is memory, his grandfather had said. Every song carries the soul of those who played it before. Tonight, Isaac would play with the souls of all those who came before him, the musician who composed the song, the generations of his family who kept it alive, his grandmother who had sung it to him as a child, Miriam, who had protected the written notes for decades. They would all be with him when he lifted his violin. Isaac stopped at a fountain to wash his face and hands. He tried to make himself as presentable as possible, brushing the dust from his clothes and smoothing his hair. He knew it was not much. He would still look like a beggar compared to the wealthy people in Helena's world, but he also knew that true worth was not measured by clothes or money. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the buildings, Isaac began his walk toward the mansion. Each step felt heavy with destiny. He did not know what would happen tonight. He did not know if Helena would accept the melody or reject it. He did not know if she would laugh at him or cry. But he knew one thing for certain. He had been given a gift, a chance to connect with something larger than himself. He had a duty to those who had carried this melody through the years. He had a purpose that went beyond his own small life. The mansion came into view, its windows glowing with warm light. Inside, Helena waited with her cold eyes and her wounded heart. She expected another failure, another disappointment. She expected to mock another foolish musician and send him away in shame. She did not know that Isaac was about to change her life forever. The same guard stood at the gate. He looked at Isaac with the same disgust as before, but this time he did not challenge him. Word had spread among the servants that the ragged violinist would return tonight. Some were curious, most expected entertainment. They looked forward to watching another musician fail and be humiliated. Isaac was led through the mansion again. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above him. The marble floors gleamed below. Everything was beautiful and cold, just like its owner. Isaac paid no attention to the luxury this time. His mind was focused entirely on the task ahead. The salon was filled with people. This was different from the day before. Helena had invited guests to witness the challenge. They sat on velvet chairs and sofas, dressed in their finest clothes, holding glasses of champagne. Their faces showed amusement, curiosity, and cruel anticipation. They had come to see a show, to watch a poor Jewish man embarrass himself. Helena sat in her usual place by the grand piano. She wore a stunning silver dress that caught the light like moonlight on water. Her hair was arranged in perfect curls. Her jewelry sparkled with every breath. She looked like a queen, beautiful and untouchable. "Ah, here he is," she announced when Isaac entered. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. The brave musician who dared to accept my challenge. Ladies, and may I present Isaac, street violinist and dreamer. The guests laughed. Some of them whispered to each other, their eyes mocking. Isaac stood calmly before them, his worn violin case in his hands. He did not react to the laughter. He had faced mockery all his life. These wealthy strangers with their expensive clothes could not hurt him. "Tell me," Helena continued, a cruel smile playing on her lips, "did you spend all night preparing? Did you find my melody in your dreams?" "I prepared," Isaac said simply. Helena raised her eyebrows. Such confidence. The last musician who came here was a graduate of the Vienna Conservatory. He studied music for 15 years. He failed in 3 minutes. What makes you think you will do better? "I do not know if I will do better," Isaac replied. "I only know that I must try." Something flickered in Helena's eyes, something that was quickly hidden. "Very well, let us begin." She turned to her guests. "As many of you know, I have been searching for a melody my mother used to sing. No one has been able to play it. I told our guest that if he can play this melody, I will marry him." The guests erupted in laughter. The idea was absurd. A woman of Helena's wealth and status marrying a poor Jewish street musician was the most ridiculous thing they had ever heard. Helena smiled at their reaction, pleased with herself. "Of course," she added, "that was a joke. Even if he plays well, I will not marry a beggar. But the challenge stands. If he can play the melody, he will receive a generous reward. If he fails, he will leave with nothing and never return." Isaac did not respond to the insult. He simply began to remove his violin from its case. The guests watched with curiosity. Some had never seen such an old and worn instrument. They whispered about how pathetic it looked compared to the fine instruments played by the musicians they knew. "Before we begin," Helena said, rising from her chair, "I must do my part. I will hum what I remember of the melody. It is not much, just a few notes, but it should be enough for anyone who truly knows the song." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she began to hum. The notes were soft and fragile, like a bird singing in the early morning. Helena hummed only a small fragment of the melody, perhaps 8 or 10 notes. Her voice was beautiful but full of pain. Everyone in the room could hear the longing in those simple sounds. When she finished, silence filled the room. Even the mocking guests were affected by the emotion in her voice. For just a moment, they saw past the Ice Queen to the wounded girl underneath. Helena opened her eyes. They were slightly wet, but she blinked away the moisture quickly. "There," she said, her voice harder now. "That is all I remember. Can you complete it?" Isaac lifted his violin to his shoulder. He closed his eyes, centering himself. He thought of his grandmother, his grandfather, Rabbi, and old Miriam. He thought of all the generations who had carried this melody through time. He thought of the Jewish musician long ago who had loved and lost and poured his heart into a song. Then he began to play. The first notes were the same ones Helena had hummed. They floated through the room like gentle snowflakes, soft and pure. Helena's breath caught in her throat. She recognized those notes. They were exactly right. Isaac continued playing. The melody expanded, grew, and developed. It was no longer a fragment but a complete song, beautiful and heartbreaking. It told a story without words, a story of love that could not be, of separation and longing, of hope that never died even in the darkest times. Helena stood frozen. Her hand flew to her heart. Tears began streaming down her face, but she did not try to hide them. The melody was unlocking something deep inside her, memories she had buried for years, feelings she had frozen to protect herself from pain. She saw her mother again, young and beautiful, sitting by her bedside. She felt her mother's gentle hand stroking her hair. She heard her mother's voice, singing this exact melody, promising that everything would be all right. For those few moments, Helena was not a cold, wealthy woman. She was a little girl again, safe and loved. The guests watched in stunned silence. They had come to mock and laugh, but the music had stolen their voices. Some of them felt tears in their own eyes. The melody was too beautiful, too pure, too full of emotion to resist. It spoke to something universal in the human heart, something that wealth and status could not buy. Isaac played on, lost in the music. He felt the spirits of his ancestors guiding his fingers. He felt the love of the long-dead musician flowing through him. He was not just playing notes. He was channeling generations of hope and sorrow and faith. When the final note faded into silence, no one moved. The room was completely still. Helena stood with tears streaming down her face, her carefully constructed walls completely destroyed. The mocking guests sat with lowered eyes, ashamed of their earlier cruelty. Isaac lowered his violin and looked at Helena. She was staring at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as a beggar or a Jew or a street musician, but as the man who had given her back the most precious thing she had lost. "That was it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That was my mother's song. How did you know it? How could you possibly know it?" Isaac smiled gently. "It is my family's song too. It has been passed down through generations, just like in your family. We are connected, miss, by this melody and by the story behind it." Helena shook her head in disbelief. "I do not understand." "There was a musician many years ago," Isaac explained. "He loved a woman from a noble family. They could not be together because of who they were and what the world expected. So he wrote this melody for her, a song that held all the love he could not express. She kept it and passed it to her daughters. He kept it and passed it to his children. Both families treasured this song without knowing that the other family had it too." Helena listened, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. The story seemed impossible, like something from a fairy tale, but the melody was real. This man had played it perfectly, note for note, just as her mother had sung it. "You are saying," she said slowly, "that our families are connected, that this song has been linking us for generations without either of us knowing." Isaac nodded. "Music is a bridge. It connects the past to the present, the living to the dead, strangers to each other. This melody brought me to you tonight, miss. I do not know why. I only know that I was meant to play it for you." Helena stared at him for a long moment. Her guests had forgotten they existed. The whole world had shrunk to just two people, standing in a salon filled with candlelight and the echo of ancient music. Then, surprising everyone including herself, Helena began to laugh. But it was not cruel laughter. It was the laughter of release, of joy, of something frozen finally beginning to melt. "You actually did it," she said through her tears and laughter. "You impossible man. You actually played the melody." The guests began to murmur among themselves. The mood in the room had shifted completely. What had started as entertainment had become something much more profound. They had witnessed something rare and beautiful, and even the most cynical among them could not deny it. Helena wiped her tears with a delicate handkerchief. She took several deep breaths, trying to compose herself. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more human. "You have won the challenge," she said to Isaac. "I promised a reward to anyone who could play the melody. Name your price. Gold, a house, position in a fine orchestra. Whatever you want, I will give it to you." Isaac shook his head. "I did not come for gold or houses or positions. I came because the music called me. That is reward enough." The guests exchanged surprised glances. A poor man turning down wealth. It was unheard of. Helena herself seemed shocked. "You must want something," she insisted. "No one does anything without wanting something in return." Isaac looked at her with eyes full of warmth. "I want you to smile. A real smile, not the cold smile you used to keep the world away. I want you to know that your mother's love did not die with her. It lives on in this melody, and now you have it back forever." Helena was speechless. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Men usually wanted her money or her beauty or her social connections. This poor violinist wanted nothing but her happiness. It was strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. One of the guests, a wealthy banker named, stood up. He was red-faced and uncomfortable. "This has been quite a show," he said loudly, trying to restore the normal order of things. "But surely you are not going to honor that silly promise about marriage. It was clearly a joke." Helena turned to look at him. Something in her expression had changed. The ice was still there, but cracks were beginning to show. "Yes," she said slowly, "it was a joke, a cruel joke I made because I never believed anyone would succeed." Isaac held up his hand. "Miss, please do not feel bound by words spoken in jest. I have no expectations. A woman of your standing could never marry someone like me. Society would not allow it. I understand and accept this." But as Isaac spoke those words, Helena felt something she had not felt in years. Rebellion. Her whole life she had done what society expected. She had been the perfect daughter, the proper heiress, the elegant socialite. She had hidden her pain behind walls of ice and let the world believe she was heartless. And what had it gotten her? A beautiful prison and a lonely life. "Society," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were bitter. "Society has told me many things. It told me how to dress, how to speak, how to think. It told me that my worth lies in my fortune and my bloodline. It told me to marry a wealthy man from a proper family, someone who would see me as an asset, not as a person." The guests shifted uncomfortably. This was not the Helena they knew. The Ice Queen did not speak like this. "My mother was different," Helena continued. "She married my father for love, even though her family disapproved. She taught me that the heart knows things that the mind cannot understand. She taught me through that melody, the same melody this man just played." She walked toward Isaac, her silver dress shimmering with each step. The guests watched in disbelief. Some of them began to whisper urgently. What was she doing? Had she gone mad? "You say our families are connected," Helena said to Isaac. "You say this melody has been linking us through generations. Perhaps that is true. Perhaps there is a reason you came to my door. Perhaps destiny brought us together." Isaac looked at her with serious eyes. "I believe in destiny, but I also believe in choice. Whatever you decide, miss, it must be your choice. Not a joke or a promise made in haste. Your real choice made with your heart." Helena smiled, and it was a real smile, the kind Isaac had asked for. It transformed her face, made her look younger, warmer, and more beautiful than any jewelry could. "You are a strange man, Isaac. Any other man would be jumping at the chance to marry into my wealth. You are telling me to think carefully." "I want you to be happy," Isaac said simply. "True happiness cannot be found in hasty decisions. Take time. Think about what you truly want. I will wait." The banker stepped forward, his face purple with anger. "This is absurd. Helena, you cannot seriously be considering this. He is a Jew, a beggar, a nobody. Think of your reputation. Think of your family name. Think of what people will say." Helena turned to face him, and for the first time she let her anger show. "My reputation, my family name, my family is gone. My parents are dead. I have no siblings, no close relatives. There is no one to carry on the family name except me. And as for reputation, what has it given me? Loneliness, empty rooms, false friends who smile to my face and mock me behind my back." Sputtered but could not find words. "I have spent years being what everyone expected me to be," Helena continued. "I have been cold and cruel because I thought it would protect me. I mocked musicians and artists because I was jealous of their passion, their ability to feel. Tonight, I heard my mother's song for the first time in 15 years, and it was played by a man who wanted nothing from me except my happiness." She turned back to Isaac. "I do not know if I can love you. I do not know if you can love me, but I know that you have given me something no one else ever could. You gave me back my mother's memory. You gave me hope that there is more to life than wealth and status." Isaac listened quietly, his heart beating fast. He had not expected any of this when he walked into the mansion yesterday. He had certainly not expected the cold heiress to speak with such honesty and vulnerability. "I ask only one thing," Helena said. Play for me again, not the melody this time, play something else. Play something that tells me who you are." Isaac nodded. He lifted his violin once more and thought about what to play. Then he smiled and began a different song. It was a Jewish folk melody, something his grandfather had taught him long ago. It was full of life and energy, a song about hope and resilience and joy despite hardship. As he played, his foot began to tap. The music was infectious, impossible to resist. Without thinking, Helena began to sway slightly. Then, to the shock of everyone present, she began to laugh again, not cruelly but with genuine delight. The music filled the room, driving away the stiffness and formality. Some of the guests found themselves tapping their feet despite their better judgment. The servants watching from the doorways smiled and nudged each other. The atmosphere had completely transformed. When Isaac finished, Helena was glowing. The ice around her heart was melting faster than she could have imagined. For the first time in years, she felt alive. "That was wonderful," she breathed. "That was my grandfather's favorite song," Isaac said. "He used to say that no matter how hard life becomes, we must never stop dancing." Helena reached out and took his hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. A wealthy Christian woman holding the hand of a poor Jewish musician in front of all her wealthy friends. It was a declaration, a statement, a breaking of chains. "I think," she said softly, "that I have stopped dancing for far too long." The news spread through Vienna like wildfire. By the next morning, everyone was talking about what had happened at the mansion. The wealthy guests who had witnessed the evening could not keep such a juicy story to themselves. They told their friends who told their friends, and soon the whole city knew. The reactions were mixed. Some people thought it was the most romantic thing they had ever heard. A poor musician plays a mysterious melody and wins the heart of the richest woman in the city. It was like something from a fairy tale. These romantics sighed and hoped for happy endings. Others were horrified. A Christian heiress falling for a Jewish street musician. It was a scandal of the highest order. These critics whispered dark predictions. They said Helena had lost her mind. They said she would come to her senses and send the beggar away. They said no good could come from mixing classes and religions. Helena ignored all of them. For the first time in her adult life, she did not care what people thought. The melody Isaac had played had broken something open inside her, and she could not go back to being the Ice Queen even if she wanted to. She invited Isaac to stay at the mansion as her guest. She gave him a comfortable room with a real bed and clean sheets. She made sure he had good food and new clothes. Isaac was uncomfortable with such luxury at first, but Helena insisted. "You gave me something precious," she told him. "Let me give you something in return." They spent the following days together, talking and learning about each other. Helena told Isaac about her childhood, about her loving mother who died too young, about her distant father who buried himself in work to escape his grief. She told him about the loneliness of growing up rich but emotionally starved, about how she built walls around her heart to protect herself from more pain. Isaac told her about his life too. He spoke of poverty and discrimination, of doors closed in his face because of his faith, of hunger and cold and the constant struggle to survive. But he also spoke of his grandfather's wisdom, his grandmother's love, and the community that supported each other through the darkest times. "We are different in so many ways," Helena said one evening as they sat in the garden. "Our worlds are completely opposite." "Yes," Isaac agreed. "But we also have something in common. We both know what it is to be alone, and we both love music." Helena nodded thoughtfully. "When I was young, I thought music was just entertainment, something to fill the silence. But now I understand it is much more. Music is a bridge, just as you said. It connects people across all the barriers that divide us." As the days passed, a genuine friendship grew between them. Helena discovered that Isaac was intelligent, kind, and surprisingly wise. He had little formal education, but life had taught him things no school could. He saw beauty in small things that Helena had always overlooked. He found joy in simple pleasures that she had never noticed. Isaac discovered that Helena was not the cold woman she pretended to be. Behind her icy exterior was a passionate, curious, generous person who had simply been afraid to let anyone see her true self. She was funny when she relaxed, thoughtful when she listened, and fiercely loyal once she decided to trust someone. But their growing closeness attracted enemies. Helena's distant relatives, who had always hoped to inherit her fortune, were alarmed. If she married this poor musician, what would happen to their expectations? They began plotting against Isaac, trying to find ways to drive him away. Her cousin was the worst. He was a greedy man who had been waiting for years to get his hands on the fortune. He had always assumed Helena would either die young like her mother or marry someone from their social circle who could be controlled. This development threatened everything. Came to visit Helena one afternoon when Isaac was out walking in the city. He was smooth and charming, hiding his true intentions behind smiles and family concern. "Dear cousin," he said, sitting across from her in the parlor, "I am worried about you. People are talking. This association with the Jewish musician is damaging your reputation." Helena sipped her tea calmly. "Let them talk. I stopped caring about reputation days ago." "But think of the family," pressed. "Think of what your father would say if he could see you now, entertaining a beggar in his house, holding his hand in front of society." "My father is dead," Helena said coldly. "He has no say in how I live my life." Leaned forward, dropping his friendly mask. "Be reasonable, Helena. What do you really know about this man? He appeared out of nowhere with a story about a mysterious melody. How do you know he is not a fraud? How do you know he did not learn about the song somehow and use it to manipulate you?" Helena set down her teacup with a sharp click. "Isaac manipulate me. He refused my reward. He told me to take time and think carefully. Those are not the actions of a manipulator." "That is exactly what a clever manipulator would do," insisted. "He plays the long game. He acts humble and selfless to win your trust. Then once you are married, he reveals his true nature and takes everything." Helena stood up abruptly. "I think this conversation is over, cousin." Stood too, his face flushing with anger. "I am trying to protect you. Someone has to. You are not thinking clearly. This infatuation will pass, and when it does, you will thank me for warning you." "Get out," Helena said quietly. "Get out of my house and do not come back until you can speak to me with respect." Stormed out, but his words left a seed of doubt in Helena's mind. She did not believe Isaac was a fraud. Her heart told her he was genuine, but what if her heart was wrong? She had been wrong about so many things in her life. What if she was wrong about this too? That night she could not sleep. She wandered through the mansion, thinking about everything that had happened. When she passed by the music room, she heard something that made her stop. Soft violin music was coming from inside. She quietly opened the door and looked in. Isaac was there, sitting by the window in the moonlight playing his violin. He did not notice her at first. He was lost in the music, his eyes closed, his face peaceful. Helena watched and listened. The melody he played was neither happy nor sad. It was something in between, something that spoke of acceptance and peace. It was the music of someone who had made peace with his place in the world. When he finished, she stepped forward. Isaac looked up, surprised to see her. "I could not sleep," she explained. "I heard you playing." "I could not sleep either," Isaac admitted. "When I cannot sleep, I play. It helps me think." Helena sat down in a chair near him. "What were you thinking about?" Isaac was quiet for a moment. "About whether I should leave." Helena felt a chill run through her. "Leave? Why?" "Because I am causing you trouble," Isaac said honestly. "Your cousin came to see me before he left. He warned me to stay away from you. He said I was destroying your life." "Talk to you." Isaac nodded. "He offered me money to disappear, a large sum, enough to live comfortably for many years." Helena's heart pounded. And what did you say?" Isaac looked at her with those calm, honest eyes. "I told him I would think about it. I told him I would do whatever was best for you, even if it hurt me." Helena felt tears welling up. Not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming emotion. Here was a man being offered a fortune to walk away, and instead of taking it, he was worried about what was best for her. "You foolish, wonderful man," she whispered. "Do you not understand? The best thing for me is you." After that night in the music room, Helena and Isaac stopped pretending. They admitted their feelings to each other openly and honestly. It was not the passionate, burning love of romance novels. It was something deeper and more real. A connection built on shared understanding, mutual respect, and the mysterious bond of the melody that had brought them together. Helena announced her intention to marry Isaac. The news exploded through Vienna like a bomb. Newspapers printed stories about the scandalous heiress and the Jewish violinist. Some headlines were sympathetic, praising true love that crossed all boundaries. Most were vicious, condemning Helena as a traitor to her class and Isaac as a scheming fortune hunter. Helena's relatives declared war, gathered all the distant cousins and convinced them to challenge Helena's sanity. They hired lawyers and doctors. They claimed she had lost her mind and needed to be placed under guardianship. If they could prove she was mentally incompetent, they could take control of her fortune. A date was set for a hearing before a judge. Helena would have to defend her sanity against a team of lawyers and medical experts who were being paid to declare her insane. The odds were stacked against her. In those days, a woman's mind was always suspect. It was easy to convince a court that a wealthy woman who wanted to marry a poor Jew had clearly lost her grip on reality. Isaac wanted to leave. He told Helena that he was not worth all this trouble, that she should not sacrifice everything for him. Helena refused to listen. "If I let them win," she said fiercely, "I will have lost more than money. I will have lost myself. I will have proven that I am still a prisoner of their expectations. I would rather be poor and free than rich and trapped." The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed with spectators. Everyone wanted to see the outcome of this dramatic story, and his lawyers sat on one side, looking confident and smug. Helena sat on the other side with Isaac beside her and a single lawyer she had hired to defend her. The proceedings began with lawyers presenting their case. They called doctors who had never met Helena but who that her behavior was consistent with mental instability. They brought witnesses who claimed Helena had been acting strangely for weeks. They painted a picture of a woman who had been seduced and manipulated by a clever criminal. Then it was Helena's turn to respond. Her lawyer was young and inexperienced, clearly outmatched by his team. Things looked hopeless. The judge seemed already convinced that Helena needed protection from herself. Then something unexpected happened. The doors of the courtroom opened, and an old woman walked in. It was Maria, the maid who had first told Isaac about Helena's search for the melody. She had not been seen since the night of the challenge, but she had been following the news and knew about the hearing. Maria walked to the front of the court and asked to speak. The judge was surprised but allowed it. What she said changed everything. "I have worked for the family for 40 years, Maria began, her voice strong despite her age. "I worked for Helena's mother before she died. I know this family better than anyone alive, and I know something that none of these fancy lawyers know." The courtroom was silent, hanging on her every word. The melody that the young musician played, the one that started all this, I know where it comes from. Miss Helena's mother told me the story herself, shortly before she died. She told me because she wanted someone to know, in case Helena ever found the melody again. Jumped up. "This is irrelevant. We are here to discuss Miss' mental state, not ancient stories." The judge held up his hand. "I want to hear this. Continue, please." Maria nodded gratefully. "The melody is called the Song of the Heart. It was composed nearly 200 years ago by a Jewish musician who loved Miss Helena's ancestor, a noblewoman named. They could not marry because of the laws of the time, but their love was real and the melody was their secret bond. The courtroom murmured with interest. Maria continued, treasured that melody and passed it to her daughter, who passed it to her daughter, through the generations until it reached Helena's mother. What Helena's mother also discovered, through research and old letters, was that the musician's family had kept the same melody alive. The two families have been connected by this song for 2 centuries, without ever knowing each other. She pointed at Isaac. This young man is the descendant of that musician. The blood of the original composer flows in his veins. The melody that brought him and Miss Helena together is not a coincidence. It is destiny completing a circle that began 200 years ago. The courtroom erupted in whispers and exclamations. The judge called for order. His face had gone pale. This was not what he had expected. Helena's lawyer, seeing an opportunity, stood up. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence supporting this story." He produced the old piece of paper that Miriam had given to Isaac, the handwritten musical notation that had been preserved for generations. He also presented letters that Helena had found among her mother's belongings, letters that mentioned the melody and its origins. The evidence was old and fragile, but it was real. The judge examined everything carefully. He asked Isaac to play the melody, right there in the courtroom. Isaac lifted his violin and played the Song of the Heart one more time. The beautiful, haunting notes filled the room. Several spectators wiped tears from their eyes. Even the judge seemed moved. When Isaac finished, the judge sat in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. "I have heard many cases in my career. I have seen greed and manipulation and lies, but I have never seen anything quite like this. The evidence suggests that Miss and Mr. are connected by a history far older than either of them. Their union is not the result of madness or manipulation. It is the completion of a story that began generations ago." He looked directly at. "I find no evidence of mental incompetence. Mrs. is free to manage her own affairs and marry whomever she chooses. This case is dismissed." The courtroom burst into applause. Helena threw her arms around Isaac, tears of joy streaming down her face, and his lawyers gathered their papers and slunk away, defeated. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. When Helena and Isaac emerged, they were met with cheers. Not everyone approved of their union, but many people had been touched by the story. The tale of two families connected through music across centuries was already becoming a legend. Isaac held Helena's hand as they walked through the crowd. He still could not quite believe everything that had happened. A few weeks ago, he had been a poor street musician, invisible to the world. Now he was about to marry one of the richest women in Vienna, but the money meant nothing to him. What mattered was the woman beside him, the melody that had brought them together, and the promise of a future filled with love. Helena looked at him and smiled. It was the real smile he had asked for, warm and genuine and full of hope. "We did it," she said. "We did it together," he replied, "and we always will." The wedding took place on a beautiful spring day, exactly 6 months after Isaac first walked through the gates of the mansion with his old violin. The ceremony was held in the mansion's garden, among the flowers that Helena had always loved but never truly appreciated until Isaac taught her to see their beauty. It was not a traditional wedding. Neither Christian nor Jewish customs felt right for a union that crossed so many boundaries. Instead, Helena and Isaac created their own ceremony, one that honored both their heritages and the unique journey that had brought them together. Rabbi came from the Jewish quarter to offer a blessing. The priest from the church where Helena's mother was buried said prayers of peace and unity. Musicians from the Vienna Conservatory played alongside street performers from the neighborhoods. The wealthy and the poor, the powerful and the humble, all gathered together under the spring sun. Old Miriam was given a place of honor at the front. She sat in a comfortable chair, wrapped in a beautiful shawl that Helena had given her, and watched with tears of joy in her ancient eyes. She had kept the Song of the Heart safe for so many years. never knowing what it would eventually accomplish. Now she saw its true purpose fulfilled. Maria stood beside Helena as her maid of honor, the faithful servant who had worked for the family for 40 years, who had first told Isaac about the challenge, who had saved them both at the court hearing. Helena had offered to free her from service, but Maria refused. She wanted to stay and watch the new family that was being created. When it was time for the vows, Helena and Isaac stood facing each other, holding hands. Helena wore a simple white dress, far less elaborate than what society expected for a woman of her wealth. Isaac wore new clothes that Helena had bought him, but he still carried his old violin, the one that had been in his family for over 100 years. "Isaac," Helena said, her voice clear and strong, "I spent most of my life frozen behind walls of ice. I believed that loneliness was safer than love. I believed that money could protect me from pain. I was wrong about everything. You came to my door with nothing but your music and your heart, and you gave me back something I thought was lost forever. You gave me myself." Isaac squeezed her hands gently. "Helena, I spent most of my life invisible to the world. I was judged by my poverty, my faith, my worn clothes, and my old violin. But you saw something different. You saw the music inside me. You heard the melody that connected us across time. You had the courage to follow your heart despite what everyone told you. I do not care about your mansion or your fortune. I care only about you." They exchanged rings that Helena had designed herself. Each ring was inscribed with a few notes from the Song of the Heart, the melody that would always remind them how they found each other. After the ceremony, there was a celebration unlike anything Vienna had ever seen. The wealthy guests danced alongside servants. The poor ate from tables loaded with fine food. Music filled the air, a joyful mix of every tradition represented. Isaac played his violin, and Helena sat beside him, watching with eyes full of love. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the garden, Helena took Isaac's hand and led him away from the crowd. They walked to a quiet corner of the garden, where a bench overlooked a pond filled with water lilies. "I want to tell you something," Helena said softly, "something I have not told anyone." Isaac listened attentively. "When my mother died, I thought I would never be happy again. I thought the world was a cold, cruel place where love always ended in loss. I built my walls and froze my heart because I was terrified of being hurt again." She paused, looking at the sunset reflected in the still water. "But now I understand something. My mother's love did not die with her. It lived on in the melody she taught me, the melody your family kept alive for generations. In a way, her love brought us together. She reached across death and time to give me you." Isaac put his arm around her. "My grandfather used to say that love is the only thing stronger than death. I did not understand what he meant until now." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight fade from the sky. Stars began to appear, tiny points of light in the darkening heavens. Somewhere in the garden, musicians were still playing. The distant melody mixed with the sounds of laughter and conversation. Helena leaned against Isaac's shoulder. "What happens now? The world will not suddenly accept us because we are married. There will still be prejudice and hatred. People will still try to tear us apart." "Yes," Isaac agreed, "but we will face it together. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Years passed. Helena and Isaac built a life together that was not always easy but was always full of love. They faced challenges and obstacles, as every couple does. Some of Helena's wealthy friends never accepted Isaac. Some of Isaac's Jewish community never fully trusted Helena, but they did not let the opinions of others define their happiness. They had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. Each child learned to play music from a young age. Each one was taught the Song of the Heart, which became the anthem of their family. The melody that had been passed down through centuries continued to travel through time, carried now by new voices and new hands. Helena used her wealth to help others. She built schools where children of all backgrounds could learn together. She funded hospitals that treated the poor for free. She supported musicians and artists who struggled to survive. The Ice Queen of Vienna became known as its kindest benefactor. Isaac never became famous outside their city, but he was beloved within it. He taught music to anyone who wanted to learn, regardless of whether they could pay. His students included rich children from the finest families and poor children from the streets. To him, they were all equal, all capable of touching the divine through music. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Helena and Isaac returned to the garden where they had been married. They sat on the same bench, now worn with age but still standing. The mansion around them was fuller now, filled with children and love. Isaac took out his violin, the same old instrument he had carried through all the years. He played the Song of the Heart one more time, his fingers older now but still capable of drawing out the beautiful melody. Helena listened with closed eyes, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. She was no longer young, but she was happier than she had ever been as a young woman. The frozen walls around her heart had melted completely, leaving only warmth and gratitude. When Isaac finished playing, Helena opened her eyes and smiled at him. It was still the real smile he had asked for all those years ago, still warm and genuine and full of love. "If you play this melody, I will marry you," she whispered, echoing her old jest that had become a prophecy. "That is what I said, is it not?" Isaac laughed softly. "And I surprised you." "Yes," Helena agreed. "You surprised me in the most wonderful way." They sat together in the fading light, two people who should never have met, whose worlds were supposed to be separate, who had been brought together by a melody older than either of them. The Song of the Heart continued to echo through time, carrying the story of love that crossed every boundary and proved that some things were truly meant to be.